So for those of you who don't know, Star Realms was actually invented by professional Magic the Gathering players, and so a lot of the strategies that one can use for Magic the Gathering, you can then use for Star Realms. And so what happens is a lot of the best strategies for Star Realms sort of evolve into 4 different strategies. Number 1, aggro strategy. What does aggro mean? It's basically like a red-white deck or a red-green deck in Magic the Gathering. You're using all your trade to get as much attack as possible and just try to burn the guy out. Damage, 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 damage. Also, some great cards, obviously. Blob cards. You definitely want to buy an Obliterator. You definitely want to buy a Spike Pod. You definitely want to buy a Battle Screecher. That allows you to manipulate the trade row and knock out bases or things that you don't need, or knock out cards that you don't want to get out of there, and also to knock out cards that would be used to defend against you, bases, healing, etc. The yellow cards are really effective in this too, but for the most part it's about look at the trade row, see what has the most damage, buy that card. We're not trying to get trade, we're trying to get attack. The faster we can attack him, the better. The reason this strategy is good is because it very often will kill an opponent before they can even get a chance to set them up, making for a nice, satisfying victory. The bad part about this is if your opponent does get set up with bases, with some scrapping or some healing or something like that, then very often what ends up happening is you have no defense against them. So as they're defending each turn and you're not doing a whole lot of damage, they're able to start coming back with bigger and bigger amounts of damage, whereas you're sitting here with not as much as you want. But the aggro strategy is very, very good when combined with scrapping, which honestly is something that you should be incorporating in every single strategy that you use. Scrapping is the best freaking way to get a good deck. Oh, these little cute little baby scrappers right here, they're so awesome. Alright. The reason that you scrap, though, is because you start with 10 cards in your deck, right? 8 scouts, 2 vipers. Every time you scrap, you're now decreasing the likelihood of one of those cards coming up. So if you bought 10 awesome cards and then scrapped those 10 scouts and vipers, all you would do is draw awesome cards. Pretty much every card is going to be more effective than a scout or a viper. So that's why you want to be scrapping, so you can get to those cards more often. This game is all about cycling. It's about getting through the deck as quickly as possible. Scouts and vipers don't allow you to do that. They help you to build your deck, but they very quickly should be gotten rid of. One of the big things about an aggro strategy is get rid of the scouts as soon as you possibly can. The reason being is not because that scouts are worse than vipers. Okay, scouts are much better than vipers, significantly better than vipers. And the reason for that is because they allow you to buy shit. You need to buy shit in order to get stuff, all right? But the reason we scrap them is because there's 8 more of them. You could scrap 6 freaking scouts and then have the same amount of vipers to scouts. You really don't want to start scrapping vipers until you scrap those first 6 scouts. Then it's okay. But that is your aggro strategy. It's about buying a lot of greens, for the most part, a lot of reds, and certain awesome yellows, Imperial frigates, Corvettes to give you free damage, things like that. That's really what you're looking for in terms of an aggro strategy. It's all about attack. It's all about going on the offensive. Strategy numero dos. My personal favorite strategy is what I like to call aggro trade. Or just lots of trade. Basically, in the first couple of rounds, you're buying as many trade cards as you can to, in turn, trade cards like, boom, Imperial Trader, one of my new favorite cards, Trade Bot, scrapping and trade, always good, and then my personal favorite card, the Cutter, so multi-way. 2 trade, 4 healing, 4 damage potentially, great card. Getting a Cutter turn 1, I mean, it basically almost assures you victory. Every time I get a Cutter turn 1, I mean, I'm pretty much set for the game. Same thing goes with like a Trade Pod or a Supply Bot, extra trade, extra abilities. And oddly enough, one of my cards that actually has grown on me the more that I've played the Blob Wheel. I used to think like, oh, 1 damage, who cares? Yeah, it's a base. Yeah, it gives me blobs, but so what? I don't give a crap. It seems like a throwaway card. It actually is a throwaway card. That's the whole point. You can scrap for 3 trade. You can play a Blob Wheel and then use those 3 trade to ramp up to something else. And then it gets rid of the Blob Wheel. See you later. Who cares? Federation Shuttle, not a bad one. I don't like it though because it's weighted, it's hard to get rid of, and it only gives you 2 trade and potentially 4 heal. So if you're building an alliance deck is good, but if you're not, not really that effective. But what's the whole point of this? Why are we buying this trade? Why do we care about these cards? What we care about, right, is right there. The money. The extra money. If I don't buy any of these cards, I am never going to be able to ramp up to a higher amount of trade. How the heck am I supposed to buy a command ship, a brain world, a capital world, an obliterator, a star fortress? These cards right here are how. Now, what's the problem with this strategy? The good news is you have all the trade that you want in order to buy all the big cards that you want. The bad news is a lot of times people, when they start using this strategy, is they forget to scrap, but 2, they buy so much stuff. They feel like they need to spend all their money. You don't have to spend all your money. The whole point of having the money is to buy the big fucking cards. So that's basically what you're looking to do. You're looking to pick up your Dreadnought, a card that has really grown on me, even though it's not that sexy. 7 damage, draw a card, who cares? Doesn't seem like a big deal. It's 7 damage and a card draw. It's weightless. And then you could scrap to deal 5 more damage. 12 damage, 1 card. Huge. Definitely worth buying. Definitely worth ramping up for. Mothership is also effective. It's a little bit worse than the command ship. 6 damage, 2 potential draw cards. I really like this card. Definitely a game changer, especially if you can buy it early. Ramping up to a Brain World, which we all know is the most powerful card in the game. And people are asking me why. Why is Brain World the most powerful card in the game? Here's what it does. It makes your deck incredibly efficient, incredibly fast. However, Brain World is not a very good card in late game. It's a very good card in early to mid game. Really what you want to do is try to use this strategy right here, using all the trade ramping to get yourself to get to a Brain World. Then you buy 1 or 2 of these cards, Obliterator, Battle Blob, these big damage cards, and you're cycling through over and over again, much, much faster than you normally would. I really like these 2 cards right here, Obliterator and Battle Blob, and the reason is because not only do they deal damage, but they ally to draw cards. You play Obliterator and you play Battle Blob, that's 7 plus 8, potentially 6 more, potentially 4 more, and 2 card draws. I mean, that's half an opponent's life right there in these 2 cards. So effective, so awesome. And so that's usually where people go wrong. Whenever they do a trade strategy, they forget to actually utilize the trade to buy big cards. It's about the big game-affecting cards. It's not about the little small 4-drop, 3-drop, 5-drop cards. Those don't really change the game as much as these cards change the game. The problem with the trade strategy, though, is it's difficult to actually get those cards. Sometimes they just never come out. And so what you really want to be doing is combining a trade strategy with healing and with bases. And so we'll actually get into that right now. The next strategy that most people utilize is what's called a healing strategy and base strategy. They don't always go together. For the most part, the base strategy is sort of independent of healing. But typically what happens is trade and healing are the bastion of the trade alliance. And so a lot of times you get these combo trade healer cards, the embassy yachts, the cutters, etc. And so what's nice is every time you get healed, what you're really doing is buying time. And so the average amount of damage that somebody can do in any one turn is somewhere between 6 and 8 damage. So if you heal yourself 6 or 8 damage, you're effectively giving yourself an additional turn. That's really what healing is actually doing. It's buying you time. What do you use that time for, though? You use that time to get better cards. You use that time to effectively damage your opponent. That's the whole point. And so what do bases do? Bases also buy you time, because instead of damage getting through to you, they're hitting the bases. Now, obviously you want to keep the bases around for their effects, but the effect of a base is not necessarily the base's effect. It's the fact that it can block damage. And so healing and base strategy is really effective because it extends the game. It makes the game longer. It prevents damage from getting to you, which in turn gives you more time to dig through the trade row and find those giant fucking cards. Fleet HQ, another card I feel is very underrated. And to get those big bomb cards to drop a lot of damage on your opponent eventually. A lot of times using a base and healing strategy, I'm winning games 75 to 80 to nothing. To me, that's much more satisfying than winning a game 20 to nothing because I aggro the shit out of my opponent. But it doesn't really matter. A win is a win, okay? It's the same thing in football. You win by 1 point, you win by 30 points. Who gives a shit? It only counts as 1 in the win column. Remember, we're trying to win the game. You play to win the game. Yeah. And so, the last strategy that I like to employ is basically what I like to call take what the defense gives you strategy. This actually comes from football. The whole idea is that your opponent is making decisions and you're making decisions. And so what you really want to do is instead of tailoring your decisions to your deck, what you're really trying to do is then effectively affect the strategy of your opponent. So every time your opponent makes a decision, what he's doing is he's demonstrating his thought process on Star Realms. And this is where the high-level Star Realms players get their advantage. Okay? There's this idea in poker where it's not about my cards, it's about what my opponent has and what my opponent thinks I have. It's not quite the same as it is in poker, but what you're doing is you're trying to figure out what strategy your opponent is trying to employ and then block said strategy. In turn, effectively stealing their strategy for yourself. If you see your opponent buying a bunch of healing cards early, what do you want to do? You either want to buy up those healing cards yourself to take it away from him, or you want to start grabbing as many damage cards as you can, just start nailing him fast before he can actually effectively utilize these healing cards and trade cards. Another thing you can do is use what I like to call tempo effects. Now, it's very hard to build a tempo deck in Star Realms, but it definitely is possible. A lot of yellows, a lot of blues, draws, trade, and then making him discard cards. Those are really big too. So then he can't utilize those awesome trade cards. If he's doing a base strategy, again, using an aggro strategy will be able to affect that. Buying up bases and then turning your deck into a base strategy, though, that's the most effective thing because it discombobulates your opponent. Now he can't use his original plan of attack against you because you have effectively stolen it for yourself. And to me, that is the best strategy that you can employ because it basically is indefensible. What you're doing is you're stopping your opponent from doing his strategy and then stealing it for yourself. In turn, you are unbeatable in that sense because you are always utilizing the strategy that's going to effectively stop your opponent's strategy and give you a strategy. So that's it, guys. That's my advanced Star Realms video. Hope you guys liked it. We'll see you next time. Rockstar takes on.